What are your thoughts on intermittent fasting and women in general? Because women, of course, whose hormones fluctuate. Does that impact? How do you feel about intermittent fasting with women?
I think it depends on the women or the woman. So if a woman is, under a lot of stress, emotional, physical, chemical stress, intermittent fasting might not be a good option because literally fasting is put on your body under a lot of stress. So I could alternative, I think intermittent fasting is a really good thing for both males and females. But as I said, it's depending on the individual. So if I had a woman that, had a lot of stress, maybe instead, because what most people do with intermittent fasting is that they kind of skip breakfast or eat food later in the day and then, but maybe swap that window and have breakfast in the morning when they wake up to kind of stabilize hormones and stop eating early in the day. So doing it that way instead, I think would be a much better option to do.
Yeah, it's funny. So many of my friends that are intermittent fasting are just skipping breakfast because they're too stressed and on the run, right? They just have a cup of coffee. They tell me they're intermittent fasting. Then I see what they're doing. They're loading big lunches and really big dinners at 9 p.m., right? And then they fast till about 12 or so. So it's almost that 16-8 break, but it's still incredibly unhealthy in a sense.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still lots of stress. The things they're eating within their time frame usually isn't the best. And it's a lot, and it's late in the day where it taxes you and actually disrupts sleep. So it goes against what you should be thinking about when intermittent fasting, right?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people eat too close to bedtime. There's nothing wrong with that, but as you said, it will disrupt deep sleep. So that's not good either, because return to sleep is when we rejuvenate and all that. So yeah, maybe swap in that window. Eat your breakfast within an hour when you wake up, and stop. Maybe have your dinner at 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. even, and have that space in the evening instead. But then again, for some people, that's difficult as well, because that's when a lot of people like to eat.
Yes. Well, yeah. I think a lot of people usually that work that 9 to 5 and are stressed during that day, then leave with that stress and only calm down and then have that hunger pang later in the day and satisfy it with usually something very heavy at night. And that again goes straight into the night. How do you combat that? Because that's always, I think, one of the biggest struggles is understanding that you're working with a client that's probably in a stressful environment, is working either 9 to 5 or even longer hours sometimes, because we all sort of, hustle these days and run the rat race of life. How do you get people to abide by but they also have to live their lives within those constraints of stressful jobs, long hours, everything else?
Well, first of all, I try to figure out what is making them want to eat late. Is it an emotional factor? Is it comfort? Is it they're hungry? If they're hungry, maybe we changed their meals a little bit, the dinner or the lunch, so it's more satisfying. If it's an emotional thing, we have to work around what is causing this emotional eating, because I would say a lot of times it is down to emotion, or that you're bored. You maybe just lay on the sofa watching TV and you like to snack, and that's a comfort thing. Maybe try to implement some new hobbies, and etc. It's kind of like working with a client to figure out what is causing them to wanting to eat late at night or having the snacking issue.
Yeah, so much of it really comes down to routine, emotions, those sort of pieces that you go into almost autopilot and don't even realize you're doing these things later on. And that's just part of your routine. So you say, let's keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I won't do my client any favor and be like, no, stop snacking. You're not allowed to snack. I have to figure out why they're doing it and help them kind of change the habit or create a new habit instead.
And when you work with clients and you're trying to change those habits, how do you changing their strict ways of eating poorly into something better? And what does that look like? So you have snacks that are usually heavily processed carbs, grains, things like that. And you're trying to heal their gut, let's say. Are you moving them more into fibrous things, into vegetables, fruits? Are you moving them into the juices if that fits? How are you getting them to switch over from crappy food, let's say?
Well, I advise against snacking, and this is because your gut has its own cleaning process that kicks in 2 to 3 hours after food. It's called a migrating motor complex. So I explain to them, if you snack in between meals, that cleanup process won't happen. And what can that result in? It will result in more gut damage. It can cause SIBO and dysbiosis, so that it will actually make things worse. So I kind of explain that to them. So if they have an understanding what's going on, how your body functions, they'll be like, oh, okay, right, maybe I shouldn't snack then. But maybe they come to me, well, Dina, I'm really hungry 2 hours after my breakfast or my lunch. I'll be like, right, we have to change your breakfast or lunch time. You have to add more foods that's keeping you fuller for longer. So it's working around that as well.
Yeah, it's really important that you get the right foods at the right time. Are you an advocate of what I've heard other people like Dr. James DiNicolantonio and others about protein in the morning, trying to get more protein in the morning, or is that something you don't abide by?
No, I think a high protein breakfast is the way to go. Like you can process carbohydrates better in the morning as well. So I'm not against that, but I think having a high protein, some good fats is important in the morning. But some people will work better with a bit higher carbohydrates in the morning as well. But definitely high protein is what I want to recommend.